In this video, we're going to talk about the Synovatron CVGT1. This is a Eurorack format module that allows you to cross-communicate primarily between Buchla synthesizers and Eurorack synthesizers. But I believe technically this should be compatible with any form of banana jack format synthesizer, whether that be Serge or Bug Brand or Buchla or whatever it may be. But in this particular video, we're going to be discussing how to sequence the Buchla Music Easel with the Make Noise Rene, which is essentially a 16-step sequencer, but much more than that, really. So the CVGT1 is broken apart into 4 sections. In the upper left section, we have the ability to take a CV in from a banana jack source and get an output in a 3.5mm jack. What we're also able to do is use an offset voltage and a scaling offset voltage to assure that the CV is coming in at the appropriate voltage for whatever synthesizer or module it is that you're sending to. So this scaling knob is always going to represent the voltage that is coming out of the output of that section. So what happens here is with the Buchla Music Easel in particular, its output is coming out at 1.2 volts per octave versus the Eurorack standard of 1 volt per octave. So what we can do here is send a 1.2 volt octave source into this black banana jack, set the scaling to 1 here, keep the offset at positive, and here we will get a 1 volt per octave version of whatever input was coming in here. Below that, we have the opposite. We have the ability to send a CV in from Eurorack, could be a sequence, could be an envelope, could be whatever you want, any form of CV. And out of this blue banana jack, we get a Buchla format, or really any synthesizer format, depending on how you utilize the scaling offset. But once again, in this case, we're talking about the Buchla Music Easel. So what we could do here is send in, and in this particular video, we're going to send a sequence to the CV in from Rene, and out of the CV out, we're going to get a 1.2 scaled octave version of that. We'll achieve that by keeping the scale set to 1.2. As I stated before, the scale switches always refer to the output of that section. This scale refers to this output, this scale refers to this blue banana jack output. So one more thing to keep in mind here is we'll notice a section that we have on the lower portion that we do not have on the upper portion is this negative CV LED. What that will do is light in the event that negative voltage is being sent out of this jack. Depending on the synthesizer you're sending to, it very well may not recognize the negative voltage, or it could even be damaged by the negative voltage. So always make sure whatever you're sending to has the ability to handle negative voltage. Otherwise, if you see this LED lit, you should probably change your scaling offset to assure you're not getting negative voltage sent through. In this particular video, I'm going to be staying away from negative voltage. I personally do not know exactly how the new updated Beamy Music Easels actually handle negative voltage. Now I have from time sent negative voltage there, and I have not broken anything yet, but I was told by a few people, and I know it's widely debatable across Buchla whether or not certain modules can just ignore the negative voltage, or maybe they would be damaged, but just to be safe, I always assure to not send negative voltage out of this when sending to my Buchla. Now, up in the upper right-hand corner, what we have is the pulse to gate and trigger converter, and below that, the trigger to gate to pulse converter. What this will allow you to do is send a pulse in here, which in Buchla I believe is a 0 to 5 volt quick pulse, and out here you'll get a Eurorack equivalent gate or trigger, the gate being a 0 to 8 volt gate, which should be standard Eurorack. Below that, The opposite of what this functionality is, it takes a trigger or a gate in from Eurorack and gives us a Buchla short pulse out from this red banana jack. Here you will see I have a banana jack plugged in already. It goes to this uncolored silver port here. What this is a ground, and you will see that I have that coming over here to the side of my music easel where there is a black banana jack to plug in your ground. I won't go into the details of grounding, but just please be sure if you are utilizing a banana jack format synthesizer and you are trying to sequence or cross-communicate, send any sort of voltages between that and Eurorack, always make sure to ground. But go ahead and research on your own why the grounding would be necessary. That's not necessarily what this video is about. So what we're going to do now is go ahead and quickly show you how this works. So we have a sequence coming from Rene. We are going to take the X gate out from Rene. We're going to feed that in to the gate in on the CVGT1. As soon as we plug this in, we will now see that we are getting a corresponding gate that goes along with Rene. And if we take a banana jack, a banana cable I should say, connect that from the pulse out to the easel's pulse in, and now you see we've got a pulse. Unplug it, we lose our pulse. Keep in mind you will need to have your pulsar or your envelope generator, whatever you're trying to trigger, set to keyboard, as these sections right here, as you can see are labeled keyboard connections, are expecting inputs from the 218 keyboard. So anytime you're sending anything directly to these three inputs, you're going to want to set these to keyboard. In a later video, I'm going to show you some quirks in regards to both the pulsar and the envelope generator, sometimes not triggering, other things like that. I can show you a handful of tricks that will show you how those really operate properly. As a lot of people often think that they are broken or not working right, but they're just quirky Don Buchla designs from the 70s. You just got to learn to love them and learn how they operate. So in another video I'll go into that. Won't really dive too deep on that in this video. But once again, we plug a pulse in and we get a pulse. So what we can also do is take the quantized CV out from Rene over here, which is just a quantized sequence. And we are going to plug that into the CV input. Down on the lower left-hand side, we're going to scale it to 1.2, as that's what the Buchla is expecting for its oscillators, keeping this at positive offset. We'll notice the negative CV is not lighting, as we are only sending it a positive sequence. And we'll take another banana cable, go from CV out to the pitch in. Now, one thing when I first received the CVGT1 is I kept trying to send my pitch to the CV sliders for the appropriate oscillators. Now, that made sense to me because when utilizing the onboard sequencer of the easel, you always send the pitches from the blue jack, which is the sequencer, to the CV inputs of the oscillators. However, after some very knowledgeable and helpful people online, specifically on the Muffbugler forum, I found out that these are not necessarily scaled to 1.2 volts per octave. The 218 keyboard is sending the 1.2 volt signals. So what you actually need to do to get proper scaling is send it directly to the pitch input on the keyboard connection of the 208. So now we'll go ahead and first I'm just going to unplug the pitch. I'm going to bring up the volume just so you can hear the pulse. You can hear the pulse from the modulation oscillator and the complex. Now we'll pitch, which is taking this 16-step from sequence from Rene. I apologize on the lighting, and I do have a short cable I can't go over there right now to show you anymore, but there's a 16-step sequence running here. Fairly simple, nothing fancy, and we'll go ahead and plug that into the pitch input. So that's the CVGT1. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I'll do my best to answer. I will admit I don't fully understand the use of the offset sections here, or maybe they just aren't necessary when converting from Eurorack to Buchla and Buchla to Eurorack. Maybe it's needed for others, but it does allow you to offset with plus minus 5 volts for various purposes. Maybe if someone does fully understand that, leave that in the comments. I'd love to share some knowledge. Cheers.